Hello and welcome to Intuitive Insights. I am your host, your no BS woo woo coach, Megan McDonough. Today we have a special guest. This special guest I've known for a long time, and he is launching has launched a new website, Sober Awakening, and is about to launch the Sober Awakening podcast, which I'm very much looking forward to. And I can't wait to share it with you. This week, we talk about sobriety, intuition, how to use your intuition in your life, what it means to you, how religion plays a role, how sobriety plays a role in intuition, and a whole bunch of other stuff. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Tim Lyons, to
What's up?
Intuitive Insight. So Tim is the president, CEO, and founder of Sober Awakenings, which is a non-profit and as well as an upcoming podcast. He is the host. So Tim, hi, welcome.
What's happening? Thank you for having me. I am so looking forward to this. I want to apologize if anybody's watching this and listening to it. I'm just testing out this new setup, new equipment and everything. So if Megan and I were going over the finer points of lighting and everything with her, big time acting background and being on set and everything. So if anything looks a little off, we're still a work in progress here, but
yeah, I'm consistently a work in progress. I think it looks great.
Aren't we all though?
So Tim and I are originally from Spring Tucky. So, and, we knew each other briefly back in, I think probably at parties or something, but we got connected in the intuitive circle through Earth Magic Academy and Vanessa Pavernetti. Anyway, Tim, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that I asked of all my lovely guests, and then let's go from there. So one, I would love to know what intuition is to you. How do you define it for yourself?
Intuition to me has become just that quiet inner knowing that we all have, obviously. And I know that's a very generic answer, but intuition is such a simple thing for so many people. We all have it. It is so right in front of our face all the time. And it's been talking to me. It talks to everybody. It talks to you all the time, anytime we want to access it. The whole trick with intuition, which comes in a variety of forms for a variety of people. It might be that clairaudient voice. It might be clairvoyant imaging in your mind. It might be that claircognizant, just knowing things. It could be a combination of all of them. But it comes across as that knowing, those messages from our higher self, our guides, our angels, the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, based on your own, theological flavor. It comes across to us. It will tell us what to do in every moment. We always know what to do. All the information is right there for us. The trick with intuition, though, is the tricky part that I am learning at getting better with is how to recognize it, how to interpret it, trust it. That's the hard part. Trust it and then act on it.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, for me, the hard part is the last two. And I said the courage to follow through with the message you receive,
Yeah. So to me, it is that quiet inner knowing that comes across in a variety of ways. It's unique to everybody. And I think through practice, meditation, whatever it might be, we learn to communicate or recognize it within ourselves, whatever our unique mechanism of intuition is. But it's that inner knowing that has the answers for you all the time. Yes. You're never alone. You always know what to do.
That's right. It's like, I call it like the soul's voice.
Mm-hmm.
So if the brain is the physical body's, control center, the heart is the soul's control center, and intuition is the voice of the heart. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you use it? And I know this could be a journey long question, but how do you use it in your life, in your work, and how, possibly did it ignite the sober awakening revolution that you're beginning?
Oh my gosh. Well, on a daily basis right now,
Mhm.
I'm getting better and better with the work I've done just probably in the last 5 years and more intensively through like the programs I've participated in via
Yeah.
Earth Magic Academy and some of the work I've just done on my own the last couple years. I've been getting better at recognizing it, but how I use it in my daily life when I run into situations where I have questions or I feel anxious or nervous, I just kind of quiet myself and I try to blank out and go with whatever comes up.
Yeah.
And I've learned in time through practice, how to recognize that. And I'm still not great at it. I mean, we have our ego based human self here and we get in our way. And it's part of this whole game we incarnate to play. God knows why we choose to do this, but we do. Right.
Yeah.
Don't we hear that all the time? Like, why did we decide to come here? And,
Yes, I know. But it's
you
also
know,
like there's something satisfying in getting dirty and sloppy and learning and growing and just, I don't
right.
know, fucking up constantly. Like it's something
Right.
fabulous about it, you know?
I,
Like
I, I, I answer that
revolution.
to people like I compare it to the roller coaster ride at the theme park, right?
Parenthood, yes.
It might make you sick. It might
Mhm.
scare the shit out of you.
Yep.
And this is the life we incarnate into. At times, it's going to be thrilling as hell. It's going to be fun. It's going to be scary. It's going to be everything. You're going to
Yeah.
scream. You might cry before you get on it. But at the end of it, it always leaves you like, shit, I want to do that again.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why?
You know that line from Parenthood? Do you remember that line where do you remember that movie Parenthood? Steve Martin. Oh, that's so
Yeah, no.
Mary Steenburgen and Steve Martin and the grandma walks in and says like some people out of nowhere she says some people like the roller coaster or she said some people like the merry-go-round but it just goes round and round for
Oh,
me
okay.
I like the roller coaster and then she walks away
Right.
you know
Right.
and she's like I think your mother's a genius or whatever. He's like well then why is she in somebody else's car anyway point is
Mhm.
I love that quote and I was like I hate the merry-go-round.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Merry-go-round's
Yeah.
boring.
It's boring as
You outgrow it.
boring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want the experience. You
Yeah.
want the big adventure. You want the
Yeah.
thrill ride for
That's
all
true.
that it comes with. But back to you asking me
Yeah.
how I apply it every day. I do have a short, like 30-second video up on the Sober Awakening website. It's right there.
Yeah.
It's me and how I quiet myself, take a few breaths, and wait for the first answer that comes in. So if you go to that website, anybody who's
Yeah.
interested,
Yeah.
www.soberawakening, all one word, .org, for those
Yeah.
who are listening and not watching and can't see it up here behind me, you'll see just a common or a pretty quick application that I use daily to kind of
Yeah.
just find the answers. They're not always what you want to hear, though. And that's the whole tricky part. They're not what your ego wants to hear. They're always the right ones, but trusting and having the courage to follow through, that's the hard part,
That's
you
right.
know?
Now, so you said you're in sales, medical sales. Now, to me,
Yes.
I find sales is extraordinarily intuitive.
It can be. Yes.
I mean, it's a place where you can access intuition or connection to serving whatever anybody needs. Is that something that you have found applicable in your like that life?
Where I notice the intuitive aspect coming into the sales that I
Yeah.
do in the medical arena right now is really, I get a real good sense for when I'm talking to clients or
Yeah.
potential clients of what they're feeling. I can tap
Mhm.
into people very well from an am I using that word correctly?
Totally.
From a clairsentient perspective.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I can kind of feel what they're feeling. I was in a meeting the other day where I had two hospital administrators with me, and we were talking about some capital equipment purchases that they were considering. And I can just feel that one's very into it, and I can feel that one is not into it. So I'm kind of tailoring the way I even communicate within that small group dynamic to each one.
Right.
With me right now, I'm doing large capital equipment that you would find in hospitals, and those quote unquote sales cycles are longer
Yeah.
than others. I mean, these are pieces of equipment that these facilities spend major money on, yet they only purchase every 3 to 5 to 10 years
Oh,
in
wow.
a lot
Yeah.
of cases.
Yeah.
So, when you're in sales and you work on commission structures, it helps intuitively when you can kind of feel when things are coming and when they're not. And when they're not, kind of knowing what to do when the desk is clear. Um,
Yeah.
you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
and how to have that presence and that patience in the moment when the big POs aren't coming in, and then how to you ride that roller coaster we were just talking about. But
Yeah.
intuition helps you ride those waves quite a bit. Get a sense
Amen.
for when things are dull and what you're supposed to be doing when things are going to, what you should be doing when things are hopping.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's very applicable.
Yeah, it's like I also feel something that's been coming to me lately, which is intuition is also it's the premise for trust. You know what I mean? Like it's
Hmm.
how we trust in the universe and ourselves in our journey, all this stuff. And so that I believe that's what I kind of heard you saying is it's also not only is it great when you're in the room and being able to tap into somebody's energetic,
Yeah.
emotional, you know, wherever they are at, but also, when you're on your journey and able to just tap into the trust that life
Yeah.
hasn't stopped. It's still going. You're still on your journey, you know?
Which I find really interesting when we really get into our deeper connectivity with spirit.
Yeah.
Um, it's very anticlimactic many times.
Yeah.
I say spirit is really people get into this type of thing because they're looking for answers. They're stressed.
Yeah.
They want the answers to what's going to come. They want to know the future. And spirit is really just more like the master psychologist who tells you to chill out.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
already defined. It's already done. It's just in the process of coming to you.
Mhm.
My sister has been starting to work with Earth Magic Academy as well. And
Awesome.
Vanessa there,
Wonderful.
yeah. And I just had a conversation with her the other day. She's been really lighting up very quickly. And I said to her the same thing, when you're getting these downloads, these messages, a lot of times it's just more like I said, the master psychologist, just chill out.
Mhm.
And she said to me, she said, 2 months ago when I started this, I would have found that totally unsatisfying. It would have frustrated me because you come into it
Yeah.
looking for answers. But the more you go down the path and you start to see things happen, it's really best the other way around. It's connection with the divine is a total drug. It is natural Xanax, really.
Yes. Speaking of which, that's a beautiful segue, Tim. Thank you for that.
Uh-huh. Oh, I see where we're
Uh,
going.
because so the next question I have for you, and this is specific for sober awakening,
Uh-huh.
is how your intuitive journey connected to your sobriety, if it did, because mine
Okay.
100% did. So
Oh,
love to hear yours.
okay. So I will try to tackle this from the 30,000 foot perspective because we have two pieces to this, right?
Right. Well, how
Um,
did this come about? Like
okay.
what led you here?
Okay, so well, first of all, let me back up to before I was in my 30s and I was 24/7 gutter drunk, which I
Yeah.
was. I was physically addicted to alcohol. I was not just a problem drinker. I wasn't a binge alcoholic. I was somebody who had to have it in their system all the time or I would get physically sick.
Mm.
It was a horrible, horrible existence. I mean, I required medical intervention to detox.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing that I still have the life I do. Well, it's not really amazing. I mean, it's amazing and
Oh,
it
it
all
is
makes sense.
beautiful. Yeah.
It really is. It was the biggest challenge I think I've dealt with so far, but it's also the biggest blessing,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
far. It's the addiction was a gift, and we can get into that, here in the later portion. But originally, intuitively, when I was younger, I always noticed I was very I was very kind of dialed into a few things. I had a very natural curiosity toward anything spiritual. I remember watching some old 1980s 2020 or one of those shows where they highlighted Ramtha by Jay-Z Knight. I don't know if you know. Okay, it's an older school. Did you just say something? I couldn't hear you.
I said, I don't even know what you're
Oh,
saying to me.
yes. Ramtha is a being
Oh,
that is channeled, I think, still by a woman named Jay-Z Knight. And it
okay. Is it
was,
kind of like, have you seen Bashar? Have you seen,
yes,
is
I
it like that?
totally enjoyed Bashar. I enjoyed Bashar.
He cracks me up. And it's like,
Yeah.
he says some amazing things, but also I'm just so intrigued from an actor's perspective, I'm so intrigued by
Yeah.
like studying him. But yes. So it's like that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. Not to digress on Bashar too much, but from the little bit of acting I've done,
Yeah.
watching him, and you're like, okay, is this guy making this up or not?
100%.
You got to be pretty damn good. I mean, I don't know how you could make all that up.
I don't
I,
think you can. And
you cannot do that.
I just would have
It's
so
got
much.
to be real.
It's got to be real, but also like, I don't know. My brain goes to like, what was the first time he started channeling, and then he was like having this like third eye on himself, going like, "What are you doing?" You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the process at the beginning. Like obviously now he's committed. He's doing it. He's in the zone. He's got his follow. You know what I mean? He's got his people.
Oh yeah.
At the beginning, like what was that awkward, beautiful stage like? That's where my brain goes to, and how hilarious it must have been to watch. Anyway, so
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. So, okay, let's not digress here. We could go down a million rabbit holes. Let's stick to the topic of Tim's early intuitive life and then how he became such a luscious gutter drunk guy in his middle age. So anyway, early years I
guide
what's that?
said how you've become a sober guide.
Yeah. So early on, I'll just cut to it. I was always very interested in anything paranormal, the books on ESP,
Oh, yeah.
like the Jay-Z Knight, Ramtha channeling of the 80s, all that stuff. When I when I was younger, although it was not recommended for the Catholics, I even tried. I drew out my own little pseudo kind of Ouija board thing on a piece of paper and a TV tray and a shot glass.
That's amazing.
And I tried to use it, and I got this real intense ringing in my ears, and it was pretty crazy. Scared the living crap out of me, and I just stopped.
Yeah.
It was something was starting to happen.
Yeah.
So that was when I was probably in like eighth grade-ish, something like that. And I never really, I don't know how many people I've told about that to this point. But the real interesting one was when I was about 16. I was taking a nap. It was the middle of the day, and I had a spontaneous out-of-body experience.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of the afternoon. I felt this vibration in my heart center chakra system, which, as I read about it, now there wasn't a lot you could read about it back then. But when your essence, your soul leaves the body into the astral, a lot of times people will feel vibrations in their chakra areas. I got this like crazy vibration in my chest. All of a sudden, I'm like kind of out and I'm up and I'm looking over my body and I'm kind of looking around the room, and I knew what was happening without knowing what was happening, but I got real freaked out and I went back in.
Yeah.
And so it happened a few more times, and I've got to credit one individual with this learning about this early life experience. One of the guys from high school who I played football with, a buddy of mine. You would never expect him to be interested in anything spiritual. At any rate, he says to me one day when we were like seniors, maybe freshmen in college, and we were probably drinking at that point or whatever, but we were hanging out. Out of the blue, he says to me, and it's just him and I. He's like, man, I got to tell you, out of everybody I hang out with, you are probably the one that is most in touch with the spirit world. I'm like, we never talked about this crap before. And I'm like, no shit. He's like, yeah, like, do you ever like blah, blah, blah? He asked me this question. And I remember, so I was like, well, screw it. I told him about this spontaneous out of body thing.
Right.
And he was so interested in it and so fascinated in it, even to the point where he lived about 5 blocks from me. He's
Yeah.
like, "Hey, dude, like if that ever happens again, why don't you like float down to my house and like then like tell me
Yeah.
what I was doing?" He's like I want to see if this crap, like I want to see about this. He was like really
Yeah.
interested. And in my older life, one of the reasons that I have the courage to come out and talk about this crap that
Yeah.
a lot of people think is weird, especially guys
Yeah.
who, are in my world, they're going to, what the hell are you talking about? Is because this individual thought it was so interesting back then. And I
Yeah.
got to think that if this person who on the outside, if you knew him, you're not surprised, but from the outside looking in, you'd be like, oh, that guy's interested in stuff like this. And I'm thinking, hey, if it was okay with that friend of mine back then, think how many people would be interested in this now,
100%.
you know?
100%. Yeah.
So I was having these experiences, just random. The out of body thing hasn't really happened much since then. It was something that happened when I was younger. And now I've kind of adopted this philosophy through, and I agree with our friend Vanessa Passarelli Tavernetti on this one. My one of my gurus from Earth
Yeah.
Magic Academy here,
Yeah.
she's not big on out of body stuff because and I agree with her, our souls wait in line for a long time to get these bodies. So, we kind of want to stay in them.
Mhm.
That's kind of the way I look at it. It's nothing I gravitate to now anyway. But so those are the experience I had when I was younger. I mean, I was always kind of in touch, dialed in. Something was going on there. As we go along in life, high school, I was a big drinker. College, I was a big partier.
Mhm.
I was always the guy who, out of my friends, was that one who, and it didn't happen all the time. I wasn't always totally sloppy drunk or anything like that. But if somebody was going to drink too much, it was going to be me. I was always that one. Um, in college, I was always the guy who was back at my fraternity house when we were cleaning up on a Saturday or Sunday morning from the party the night before, and there was still beer in the keg, and I didn't care if it was 10 a.m. I was into that bad boys. Like, hey, it's the weekend. Let's get a little loose.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, I was like one of these 12 o'clock somewhere guys.
Yeah.
And I always was a drinker, but in that, my intuitive self started to shut off as my addiction started to take hold. My spiritual intuitive experiences started, my connection just started to go away. And then so when when I was finished with college, I was always a heavy drinker on the weekends, but
Mhm.
I could keep my lurking addiction at bay because I had to be in an office on
Right.
Monday.
Yeah.
And I would have some real rough hungover Mondays, but because I had to be in the office, I could kind of shut it off. I got to a point where I was real heavy on the weekends and I shut it off during the week. And then I met my wife and there was partying involved. And that's when in my later 20s, I started to realize that something was wrong because these people, like when we were dating, my wife and I would go out and party, or I'd party with my friends. They
Yeah.
started to get quote unquote normal and not want to go to the bar at noon on a
Yeah.
Saturday. And I still did.
Yes. Yes.
So that transitioned into me kind of starting to hide how much I was drinking. And I started to not advertise it as much. I sneak a couple drinks because I just wanted to have that calm, relaxed buzz feeling. I wouldn't let my wife know about it.
Yeah.
We had a little girl, or who's now 23 at the time, and I'm still married. They still love me. They're actually downstairs as we speak. They're right there with me for all this. Um, but anyway, so I was progressively getting worse with the drinking. And then
Yeah.
I got a job in outside sales 20 years ago when I was 30, and I was not in an office all the time. I worked out of my home, and it was real easy to cut out early and get a few drinks. Also,
Mhm.
this was a drinking environment. I worked with other salespeople. We go grab
Yeah.
a drink and
Yes.
everything like
Sales is
that.
a big party
Right.
connection.
So
Yeah.
the hangovers would get worse and worse and worse. And then all of a sudden, that old mentality of, well, it's noon somewhere, Nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to know if I have a quick drink. It's called an eye opener in the world of AA or alcohol addiction. Eye openers start to become common because what you're doing, and they're your mimosas and your Bloody Marys. There's a reason people do those. Hair of the dog, right?
Yeah.
It's to kind of self-medicate or tamp down those hangover symptoms that you're
Right.
having. So it's just a real slippery slope. So I went from that to a point where I needed the alcohol to help me mitigate withdrawal symptoms more and more. And you get to a point where I'm working outside my house. I am driving around all day and I'm constantly in a state where I'm drinking too much. And then I'm giving myself permission to self medicate out of it.
Right.
So I would stop and get drinks here and there. I would stop at the gas station, just get a 24-ounce Miller Lite, whatever it might be. And the funny thing is, people are like, when you're at that point, how did you ever hide it? And the whole thing with somebody who is physically addicted, as I became in my mid to late 30s, is you're not sloppy drunk all the time. You wake up at 3 a.m., the alcohol has left your system, but you feel horrible. Your anxiety's bad. It's just crazy. It's crushing. So you do the only thing you know how to do to make yourself better. You take a drink, and it's just all you need is one or two to get through that moment, maybe get back to sleep. Then you wake up, you need another drink. You go a few hours, you need another drink. You're not really accumulating these drinks in your system. It's more so when it's leaving your system, you just need to put a little bit more in.
Yeah.
Is that making sense? So, like, if
Yeah.
I'm drinking in the morning, I might not even get a DUI or anything like that, which
You're
by the grace of
maintaining, like,
God, I never did.
yes.
Um,
You're just trying to get back to
you're just keeping that steady
yeah,
state level,
which is drunk.
which is drunk, but you don't necessarily have these excessive amounts in your system. You just need
Right.
it. You can't function without it.
Yes. Yes.
It's total physical addiction. Outwardly, somebody might smell alcohol on me, but everybody knew I was a drinker. So I'd just be like, yeah, I had a rough night last night.
Right.
Right. I wouldn't tell them that I'd been drinking already that day. I carried 70 more pounds than I do now. I was, you're always kind of looking rough and disheveled and puffy and uncomfortable. But it did come to a head when I was 40 years old. I got to a point where I could not hide it anymore. It erodes your physical health to such a point over time, where you just can't escape it. My family caught on, and I was pretty much given the ultimatum: either you get off of this, or that's it. And
Yeah.
so I came clean. It was the most refreshing experience of my life. But interestingly, about a year before I decided to get sober, I was still very interested in anything paranormal or the other side, and I did a meditation to meet my spirit guide.
Ooh.
And I came through and I met my primary guide. The name I was given is Ashtel.
Oh.
And he comes to me in a lot of blue robes, and he's kind of like I guess I'm hearing 55 right now, and he looks kind of like Sir Alec Guinness, Obi-Wan Kenobi character from
Nice.
Star Wars.
Yes.
And we met, and originally, because of my Catholic fear, I thought about it later, and he's laughing at me right now. He loves this part of the story. So because of my Catholic guilt and my upbringing, I thought that it was something evil at first. And in my drunkenness, I told him, like, literally, go away verbally.
Yeah.
And he thinks it's quite comical because he's like, he's like, okay, dude,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm off.
Yeah.
But they don't go away. They'll honor our request. And
Yeah, they just like
see
hang
the
out
whole
a bit
picture, right?
aura. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like, I'm going away. Until somehow in me, I finally came back to it and I embraced it again. And I was like, okay, I'm really struggling here. I'm in hell. I don't know how to exist. I mean, not only was my physical condition bad, but I was having trouble paying the bills. Everything, my life was going to come crashing down horribly in very short order if I didn't stop what I was doing.
Yeah.
I knew it. And so I didn't know what else to do. I already kicked him out. So I let him back in. And so basically my spirit team, they came down, they lowered their frequency and came and got me. And then everything crashed right? Everything crashed, but it was the death. It was the death that I needed before the resurrection, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. It
So
was your
I,
transformation.
I started going to AA, and I got my body clean and sober again. And the most interesting thing happened too. Once I decided to get sober, the pharmaceutical job I was with, and I had hid this from for the longest time, I got laid off after 10 years, which was the best thing to have happened to me because I got 6 months off with an amazing severance package. I lost 70 pounds. I got sober. I got a better job than what I had before that has
Yeah.
transitioned into what I'm doing now,
Mhm.
which is the second job since then. But anyway, everything crashed and then it started rebuilding in the most interesting, miraculous ways.
Yeah.
First, I got physically sober. After you get physically sober, which is where sober awakening comes in, you
Yes.
get physically sober, but you start looking for something more. I was going to AA meetings, and AA is a very spiritually based program.
Mhm.
Some people love it, some people do not.
Mhm.
It's different in different places, and different people have different experiences. But anyway, I was looking for something more, so I start going back to Catholic Church, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
at the same time, though, I am having this budding curiosity because I drive all over the state of Illinois, south of I-80, for those of your listeners who are familiar with the Illinois geography. So I have a lot
Yes.
of drive time, and I start
Yeah.
listening to podcasts. And in conjunction with going back to church, I start listening to all these podcasts and audiobooks about what goes on the other side. I'm just interested in it. So I start reading all this stuff or listening to stuff about near death experiences because I want to
Mhm.
hear what's over there. Right.
Mhm.
I'm like, what really does happen? Because there's so many reports of the light and everything like that
Yeah.
that are just so common. It's like, how can this not be real? So I want to hear what this is. And so I'm interested in that, which led me to stumble onto channeled work. And I have a variety of authors and channels that I really like. I channel for myself now. I channel higher self. It's pretty cool. Um, but at any rate, I started getting interested more and more in that. Catholic Church started not doing it for me. Although interestingly, I'm being told I need to get back in there
Hmm.
for a lot of reasons lately, which I won't get into right now, or we can if you want. But at any rate, that's a whole side discussion.
Yeah.
Um, but so it wasn't doing it for me. I was to the point where it was during COVID. I was sitting in back of church there and I'm just meditating through mass. I'm not even getting anything out of what's going on the altar.
Yes.
During the
Yeah.
homily slash sermon, whatever people call it, the priest had about 30 seconds to snag me, or I was closing my eyes behind me. I had my COVID mask going, and I'm just like sitting in back, like with my eyes closed. And,
Yeah.
we'd done the Catholic drill long enough, right? I can hear when they're kneeling, standing, all that. So I know
Yeah.
when to move, but I'm not paying attention to anything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm doing all these meditations on YouTube. I'm not getting anything out of Catholic Church. I'm drinking up all this spiritual channeled material, which is, I think, where I found Bashar about that time at
Yeah.
first. And
Yeah.
anyway, I hit some pretty stressful points, and I was like, I'm meditating. This isn't working. I want to know the answers. I want to know, back to that, we want spirit to give us the lottery tickets initially. We want them to tell us what to do when really they're just going to tell us to chill out. It's already worked out, right? But I'm over here. I'm looking for the answers because I'm stressed. And so lo and behold, I see Vanessa from Earth Magic on Facebook advertising their phase 1 intuitive group.
Yeah.
And it's do this, do that, have a conversation with your deceased grandma. And so it was pretty cool. I'm like, okay, she's going to get into all the things I'm interested in. So I went to my wife, who, she knows I'm sober at this point and everything. She
Yeah.
knows I'm kind of interested in more of the spiritual stuff. And I say, what do you think if I take this meditation group? That's how I
That's what
phrased
I
it.
called it. That's what I
Yeah,
called
my
my husband
meditation,
too.
my meditation group. And she's like,
The
whatever keeps you,
meditation group.
yeah, whatever keeps you sober.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great. So I do their phase 1. Interestingly enough, I didn't go right into phase 2. I was guided not to, and then I was guided to go into phase 2 after taking what I call a gap year.
Mhm.
But I was very, very guided to, almost pressed to at that point. If I didn't go into that phase two group, I would not have met my two Sober Awakening board members. There's a reason all of this happens.
Yeah.
So through all that, I found, Earth Magic Academy and Vanessa and Rhett. And at
Mhm.
the same time, though, I'm feeling this need to, okay, I'm sober, I'm getting spiritually dialed in. I'm feeling this growing need to talk about it. And so I
Yeah.
go to my wife because, if I'm going to go out and publicly be like, dude, I was so drunk, I was gutter drunk, that's my term, when I was
Yeah.
40, and now I'm doing all this crazy shit,
Yeah.
I'm going to put it all over and out there. She's
Yeah.
fine with it. She's like, I think you need to do this, you
Yeah.
know? And so first thing I did was I'm going to make a website. And I think you and I had some
I was about
communication.
to say, well, I remember
And
you bought my book, and I was like, because it's pretty female centric. It's intuitive based, but it's pretty. And I was like, oh, okay, I hope you like it. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And then, but it was, it kind of came out of that Earth Magic Academy experience, and
absolutely.
then, but then we were talking, and I remember saying, I'm like, I see you. I think I was like, I see you doing
Coach. You
was that what?
said coach. You said I keep hearing coach.
Oh, is that what I
On
said?
those, we traded some audio messages
Yes,
through
yes,
Facebook.
yes.
Yeah.
And
You're
I was
like, you're
like, see,
supposed to do something.
yes.
Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's right.
And so that was very inspirational to me as well. So I was like, well, I'm going to put together a website and I'm going to start getting whatever it is out there. And when I went into GoDaddy to make a website, I was looking
Yes.
for domain names. And at first I started with Awakening Alcoholics. And I don't like alcoholic. No, see, you don't like that either because I'm not
Oh,
alcoholic anymore. I'm sober. I am
no.
sober right now. That
And
is,
this is why I don't like it. I actually had this conversation. There was a couple of, I have this like artist group that we get to, do kind of, it's like I call it like an actor's gym or an artist gym once a week. And there's several of us in there who are sober. And I was talking to one of the guys about his journey, and because he brought it up, and he said, we were talking about, like you said, you did Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm one of those people who I'm not a big fan of that organization just because it didn't vibe with me.
mhm.
Because for me, in my journey, which is different than yours, but I sobriety is an empowering choice, not a default I had to make. And even if it was a default you had to make, it's still an empowering choice. And then it's the choice of being responsible. It's the choice of making higher minded, higher vibrational decisions for yourself. We all have a shadow side, we all have a light side. It's choosing the light side over the dark side, to quote Star Wars, if we're bringing it back to your spirit guide. But anyway, yeah, that's what I was going to say. And I can't even remember why I started saying it because my brain is perimenopausal.
Doesn't matter. It was important for you to say, so you were inspired to say it, and now it's
Yes.
said. The right person will
Yes.
hear it.
I don't even know. I don't even know. Oh, and that's why I was saying I don't like the word alcoholics. I like the word
Yeah.
sobriety because sobriety is a positive spiritual choice, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And yes, and so it spits out these like available domain names based on some of
Yes.
the things you put in.
Right.
And I
Right.
got Sober Awakening, which I'm like, oh, I like that
Yes.
.org, not .com, .org, which is the typical. I don't even know what you call that little thing. There's a word for that, like not .com, .org,
Yeah.
whatever. There's a word for it, but
Yeah.
everybody knows what we're talking about. But I
Yes.
got .org, which is the common suffix used by nonprofits.
Right.
You don't have to be a nonprofit, but they all use .org.
Yes.
And I thought, well, hell, I started my professional career the first 7 years. I did nonprofit fundraising.
Oh, I didn't know that.
For our old high school.
Stop it. Really?
No, yes. You don't pay attention to the mail you get asking for money, do you?
Oh God, no. I was,
No.
we have a different conversation with the Catholic faith. I was
Yeah. Well, you would have gotten tons
always,
of mail
yeah.
with my
I
name
tried to
on
get
it.
kicked out of that school so many times, and I'm
Mhm.
glad I didn't. But I was just like, I wasn't a fan of the Catholic hypocrisy. Not
Right.
the idea of why it would. Well, okay, that's a different subject. I find that spirituality and religion are two different things. Spirituality is a to me, is a responsible, self-responsible journey. Religion, to me, most religions are a fear-based construct in order to take the responsibility away from you on your journey.
They have been, and I think they can change, which is why I think I'm being guided to get more back into the Catholic Church. Because while I'm not a dogmatic Catholic, I still
Yeah.
carry the membership card, right? And
Okay.
I think that there's a lot of people that if I start showing my face at
Yeah.
Mass more often are going to start asking me about the spiritual aspect and my beliefs in what Jesus really meant and what it is like to be a Christ. We are all Christs in the making. That's what we
Well, if
don't
you look at some of
get.
the Gnostic, I mean, we can get,
Oh, thank you.
you know what I mean? Like you go to the
Mm,
Gnostic Gospels, you go to like what happened in that 30 years, that he was missing. There is, ideas about him going to India and, taking the journey of basically, more of a Buddhist approach, more of a, you are the light essentially, and a more spiritual, self-responsible approach than the power-based, fear-based structure of the religion that came after. Anyway, that's my input.
yeah. Just to put an aside in on that, if you really start getting into, uh, which I'm no expert, but I've read enough and learned enough about Buddhism, the
Mm-hmm.
Hindu faith, and Hermeticism from ancient Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
and through like the Kabbalion and some of those books. And if you learn that and then you look at what Jesus taught, there's a lot of those aspects in his message.
Absolutely.
And they never tell us that growing up. So there's a very unified aspect there, and there is a
Yeah,
true message of Jesus, and it's much simpler than we've made it.
absolutely.
So religion could be more than it is now. And I think
Yes.
if you feel motivated to get back in there and just speak your truth among the dogmatic people, there
Yeah.
can be benefit to that.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm starting to.
I really feel like I prefer, I don't know, I think I just prefer the lack of structure in that vein.
Yeah.
Oh, I just some people like that, and they need the bumper cart, Um,
Hmm.
I like to figure it out as I go, which is my
Yeah.
detriment at times, but anyway,
Yeah. I feel like I should be getting back in church, but do it my way, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah,
But anyway, I digress. Back to, sober awakening. Where were we with
yeah.
that?
I don't know.
What
Oh,
the hell?
the org.org.
Yeah, the .org. Yes, yes. So I was a fundraiser in the beginning for a Catholic high school located in Springfield, Illinois, that Megan and I both went to. So I
Yeah.
thought, well, hell, what if I could put this together as a nonprofit,
Hmm.
and get, produce a product that people will donate to keep going.
Yeah.
And I have seen firsthand the power of, if you have a good product, a lot of people will have no problem donating $10,
Yes.
$25. I've
Yes.
already actually received a $5,000 grant for the startup of the podcast, as well as $5,000 in private donations.
That's fantastic.
And
Congratulations.
yes, it would not be possible without being a 501c3 tax exempt nonprofit, because people do this stuff because they need to donate to charity. They're going to donate to charity, but it needs to be a tax exempt charity because they want the tax benefits.
Mm-hmm.
There are grants available. Like I said, there
Hmm.
are corporate budgets where you have XYZ Corporation and we have a philanthropy budget, and we have a list of organizations that are going to get our grants through our
Yeah.
foundation or what it might be. Somebody is. It's money that's going to go out, but you have to be
Yeah.
a nonprofit to get it.
Yeah.
So I think, why the hell can't I set this up as a nonprofit? So I went through and did all the paperwork. We registered with the state of Illinois, and once that was done, submitted at the federal level to get the 501c3 designation, which allows us to be tax exempt. We got that 6 months after we were incorporated in Illinois, and we're off to the races. You've got to have a board of directors. It's a public
Yes.
charity. I don't own Sober Awakening. We've
Yeah.
crafted it to where I run it like a business. I can, draw
Yeah.
a reasonable income off of its activities for administering things. But I don't own it. So the microphone that was purchased via a grant that you see right now, if Sober Awakening folds next week, which it's not going to, the
Yeah.
microphone would have to be liquidated. All the
Yes.
assets would have to go back to a similar charity or the state of Illinois. So
Okay.
I own nothing. Like I said, I can take a modest income off of it that the IRS deems as reasonable for a nonprofit
Right.
of this type. But other than that, when it's done, nobody owns it. It's a
Mm.
public charity. And my two wonderful board members,
Yes.
I've told them that, it's a big trust thing because bringing them in, we're a board of three. We all have equal say in it. Nobody's the
Yes.
owner. And although on paper in the bylaws, I'm the managing presence,
Director. Yeah.
they could call each other up on the phones and say, I think Tim's lost it. Let's call a meeting and vote him out. And
Yeah.
they legally, they can do that anytime they want.
Sober awakening, like you kind of spoke to why it came about, like and how it came about. But
Mhm.
and I feel like it's obvious who it's for, but can you speak a little bit more to who you envision this platform being for?
Yeah. So there are two groups that I want to impact with Sober Awakening. They're not going to be so much the person that's struggling with alcohol and needs to dry out right
Mhm.
now. I'm not the guy that feels called to pull people off the street, get them in meetings,
Sure.
get them in treatment, get them whatever they need to do.
Yeah.
I'm the person through Sober Awakening. Sober Awakening is going to come along when you are established in your physical sobriety, but spiritually, all the old things did not work anymore.
Mm.
So we need to start cultivating new directions to go. And with me, what I
Mm.
experienced was as the alcohol left my system, the
Yeah.
intuitive stuff that so many people are turning on to right now came rushing back in. And that's why I sought out Earth Magic Academy. I told
Yeah.
Vanessa when I got together with her, I was like, I've been doing all this stuff, but it's time for structure. I need somebody to help mentor me in this. I need people to quote unquote sit in circle with when we do the readings and all that stuff. I'm
Yeah.
past doing this by myself.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of people are just ready to do this in general in the world right now. But when you take that destructive, low vibrational substance, alcohol, out of your life, your natural intuition for so many people is just going to start lighting up. We got so much energy coming into the planet right now, and it is
Great.
going to just take off. People are like, what do I do with this? And I
Yeah.
know how to talk to people who are coming back from that addictive experience and where to
Yes.
go with that. That's who Sober Awakening is for primarily. There's a secondary group there that Sober Awakening is for as well. And those are the people who might not necessarily be gutter drunk or
Yes.
might not really identify as having a complete alcohol problem, but people, as they become more spiritual, they are going to find that they want alcohol less.
Yes.
And, I,
That would have been me. Yeah.
yeah, you
Yeah.
may not have ever been able to stay away from boozing. You may not have been 24/7 drunk or had a quote unquote problem with it, but you're going to find as you become more spiritual, you just want alcohol less. You don't want it anymore. It
Yeah.
becomes totally unattractive. And those type of people I'm hoping are, attracted to Sober Awakening as well. People who are in that state where I hope to find them, where they're looking for something more spiritual, can take from every episode something, an experience that they resonate with to some degree, but something practical that they can take and apply in their life right now with every
Okay.
episode. I want them to be able to take something tangible, a practice, an idea, something simple that I can apply right now in my sober life to bring me to a more grounded spiritual state. One guy I just connected with via TikTok, who I just found who was fascinating. He has all these really interesting expert perspectives and techniques for meditation that he learned in the Himalayas recently. And he's an ex-addict. And it's just these people, it's like stuff he makes TikToks of stuff you can do right now to
Yeah.
heal your root chakra, your sacral chakra, that type of thing. Simple practices. His experience is fascinating, and he can leave you with something, boom, that's tangible
Yeah.
that you can take with you. I've been walking the earth for 51 years, although I say I'm 49. I tell people once I hit 50, I started manifesting the Benjamin Buttons effect. So
Well,
I'm
you look
saying,
great.
well, thank you. I'm saying I'm 49. Once I
Yeah.
start telling people like we go a ways and I start telling people I'm 40 and it's really been
Yeah.
60,
Yeah.
people are going to start looking at me like you've been
Hmm.
living hard, dude,
Right.
we're here for a reason and that's safe. I hope that this can be what I fill it with for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
pass it on to whoever wants to carry that torch. Cause like I said, it's a nonprofit. I will not own it.
Tim, I love your light. I love all I took a couple of Kabbalah courses in LA, and one of the things, I think I've talked about this before, is that one of the messages that I love, because the thing I loved about Kabbalah was there were a lot of great practical bite-sized things that I could, kind of like you said, apply in everyday life,
Mm-hmm.
or a different perspective on a lesson that just helped me see it more clearly. So there's one about I believe it's tikkun, which would be kind of like your karma or your correction is what tikkun I believe means. So the message that you're working on in life, right? Like the reason your soul came on this journey. What did it want to? What was the big thing it wanted to tackle? Right? There's little things you tackle along the way.
Yeah.
And since you are a football player, I will say, and I always see this as a football game. They talk about being in a football game, right? Or a game, right? Soccer, football, whatever you want to play. And the game is your tikkun. The game is your correction. The game is that big life lesson that you've come here to learn, right? And when you play the game, the other team, the opponent is what they call it, is always as strong or stronger than you. So that when you win, you really are growing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if your opponent wasn't as strong as you, right, then the game would be like, whatever, who cares?
Right.
Now you learned nothing, you did nothing. You're like, so what? That was easier done in my sleep, you know? But
Right.
it's when the opponent is as good or better than you that you really stretch yourself and learn and grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm seeing and hearing that now in talking about your journey and the sober awakening journey, that it was like your challenge was a big one because your light is very bright and has to shine for others.
Oh, thank you.
Like using that lighthouse, it became so strong. And it's like you needed to have, almost like you needed to have those massively challenging times to strengthen your light so that you can be a beacon for others.
Well, thank you. And we all have those in our life. And I am a believer that in each carnation, when we put together our soul blueprint and the path we're going to take, we have choice points along
Yes.
the way. And if I did not make the choice to dry out, get sober when I did, and embrace the things I have now, I would be dead. I'd be dead. I would be dead. I mean, I would have gotten what I would have out of this incarnation. I would be on to the next, but I made that choice then, which has put me on a totally different quote unquote timeline path, whatever, if you will.
Yeah.
And here we are. And
Yeah.
so I've decided to keep going through my choice to get sober, through my choice to start, sober awakening and all that good stuff. Because right now, when I go into like what my timeline is telling me, I'm feeling I'm going to be around for quite a while now. Whereas
Uh-huh.
before, the road I was on, I may not have been, depending on how I reacted to what I was presented. Again, though, we choose all these battles before we come to fight them. We choose the game that we're going to play.
Mhm.
And I guess so far, I mean, I'm playing pretty well, I hope. I
Mhm.
mean, or I'm choosing to keep it going. I must
Yeah.
be the higher self is enjoying something here. So
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for being on this podcast with me. I cannot wait for the sober awakening. I can't wait to hear it and listen to it. Can you tell me when it's starting?
well, you can go to the website right now.
Yeah.
The podcast is the primary launch. That's when we're going to go live with the more formal aspect of Sober Awakening. That's when people will be able to go on if they're so inclined and make a donation. If they want to see Sober Awakening grow and support its mission, they'll be able
Mhm.
to do that online. If anybody's interested, I just concocted something I call the
Ooh,
7-day intuitive.
oh, I love it. What is
Yes, the 7-day intuitive,
Yes.
which is a very simple, if you've been on the spiritual path for a while, you're going to find it very basic, but it
Yeah.
is designed for people who don't have much, they may be very spiritually curious. It's seven
Yeah.
days of intuitive exercises that start with setting intentions and scanning and basic meditation, and end with, on day 7, very simple, open-ended intuitive writing. I don't even call it
Love it.
automatic writing because
Yeah.
the Christians out there would be like, "Ooh, divination, the devil." I call it intuitive writing. Yeah, 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 yeah. But
We're on
anyway,
another level now. We're in a different universe.
right.
We're speaking to are not worried about that.
I don't, yes, that's a whole different topic altogether. But yes, you can go to Sober Awakening right now and see the framework, what we're about. You
Yeah.
can put your name in there. You'll get your copy of the 7-day intuitive, get email updates, all that good stuff.
I love it. I love it. I'm so proud of you and happy for
Thank you.
you. And just, it was like a seed of an idea, what, like a year ago, 2 years ago.
Two
And it's
years. Yeah.
blossomed into this, like, I just love watching you grow with this. I
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, you had something to do with it as well.
I mean,
Yeah,
I was delivering messages.
you were. You were. I remember almost feeling like when you messaged me and asked after phase 1 if I was going to do phase 2, and I said no, not right now. And I remember almost feeling like a sense of disappointment, like,
For me.
yeah, just because you're like, oh, I want you to see, I wish I'd see you do this, like,
Oh, well, yes. Well,
yeah,
it's because I was like, I mean, in a way though, I felt like I was like, oh, he'll come back.
I
You know
did,
what I mean? I
I
was like,
did,
at first I was like, oh, he should continue.
yeah,
And then I was like, well, he will. Like that
yeah,
was like the message that I got, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And it was like, you were following your intuition and divine timing. And then you met the right connections, some of my favorite people in the world.
No, I love all you guys, everybody I've met, everybody I've worked with, everybody like you who I've reconnected with. You know,
Soul contracts are soul
soul
contracts.
contracts are soul contracts, what roles you're supposed to play in each other's life.
Well, thank you so much. And I can't wait for Sober
Yes.
Awakening to launch. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah. Thank you. So thank you. Love and blessings to you. Thank you for having me. It's
Becca, I'm
awesome.
so glad you're here. This was great. This is really fun.
All right. Cool.
All right.
We'll keep the magic going. All right.
Thank you so much for joining us. And if you are looking for more inspiration, sobriety inspiration, you can find him. You can find him at soberawakening.org, and you can find his new podcast wherever you get your podcast. And if you're just joining us, or if you've been listening for a while and you are curious about your own intuitive journey, I have several offerings that can assist you with that. One is a journal right there. It's a coloring workbook journal based on spiritual sketches that have come through readings that kind of guide you on a journey of unveiling your true self, your nature without all the filters that may or may not be yours or for you or still for you. It takes you on a spiritual journey to help you really connect with your soul self and really feel that light and magnetize it. Hence the name. This year, I have the 2025 Moon Magic Create. This is a journal, workbook, guide where you go through the phases of the moon, the zodiacal filters that they find themselves in each phase throughout the year. And you get to journal how that affects you, how you're resonating with it, what to do in each phase of the moon during the eclipses. And I offer not only the prompts of what to do or to release, but also a space for you to create. So, how is this feminine energy flowing through you, and what is it prompting you to create in your life? And finally, I have Ignite Your Life. This is a 6-week course roughly based in the Magnetize Your Light workbook. But this is a work at your own pace, kind of deep dive into exploring physical movement, breath work, intuitive connection and insight and exploration and coloring and journaling, and just really like a lifelong practice of shifting your perspective to open yourself up to more connection, coincidence, and flow in your life. And finally, if you're looking for a reading to figure out how and where you fit into your journey right now in your life, you can always find me at Magnetize Your Light. All right. Thanks for joining. Make magic today. Big buckets of love.